The wind that moves along the southwest coast of Wales smells of iron and salt. Each wave hits the Pembrey shoreline with the patience of something ancient, something that has seen too many deaths to care anymore. The dunes rise and fall like the backs of buried giants. When the tide is low, bones sometimes show through the sand. No one ever knows whose they are. By day, the place looks almost peaceful. Children run between tufts of grass, the cries of gulls echoing overhead. But after dark, the forest behind the beach becomes another world. The trees close in, the paths twist until you're certain you've been walking in circles. And from somewhere in the thick, wet dark, the air carries a smell that doesn't belong. Burned oil, scorched meat, something chemical and wrong. Locals whisper that Pembrey never truly cooled after the fires that once fed it. They say the forest breathes smoke even when the wind is still. They say those who burned here never left. In the summer of 1995, two boys rode their bikes into Pembrey woods with nothing but sandwiches, a flashlight, and curiosity. Jacob Binion was 14, thin, thoughtful, obsessed with history. His friend Alan was louder, bolder, and the kind of kid who would kick a wasp's nest just to see what happened next. The old Royal Ordnance Factory lay at the center of their plan. It was a ruin now. Ivy-choked walls, half-collapsed roofs, concrete bunkers that burrowed into the earth like forgotten tombs. Most people stayed away. The place had a reputation. Accidents, fires, missing pets, stories of lights moving under the trees at night. But to Jacob, it was history that you could still touch. They followed the skeleton of an old railway line, its rusted tracks half swallowed by soil. The air grew cooler the deeper they went. Birds stopped singing. Alan laughed nervously. "Feels like a horror movie, huh?" "Yeah, and you're the first to die." They both laughed, but the sound felt small. The forest didn't laugh back. At the first cluster of bunkers, Jacob opened his sketchbook. He wanted to map them for a school project, remnants of wartime Wales. He marked outlines, took notes. Alan grew bored and threw stones at a rusted door until it groaned open. "Go on," said Alan, grinning. "Historians got to explore." Jacob hesitated. The entrance yawned like a throat. He turned on his flashlight and stepped down a short flight of stone stairs. The temperature dropped instantly. His breath fogged. The smell hit next, damp concrete mixed with something acrid and burned. The beam of light found nothing but gray walls and water stains. Then he saw it, a dark smear high on the far wall, a rough handprint baked deep into the surface, reddish-brown and ridged. "Jacob," he called, his voice echoing. "There's something weird." The air pulsed. A sudden blast of heat rolled through the bunker, slamming into him like an open furnace. His flashlight flickered. The stench turned sharp, electric, then fire, everywhere, roaring up his sleeves, across his chest, biting into his skin. He screamed, clawing at himself. His hands were melting, dripping, his clothes collapsing into glowing threads. He stumbled up the stairs and burst into daylight, collapsing in the dirt, choking on smoke that wasn't there. Alan stared, frozen. "Jacob, there's nothing on you." Jacob looked down. The flames were gone, his skin unburned. Only the smell remained, charred, chemical, impossible to wash from the air. They didn't speak again until they reached the edge of town. Jacob's knuckles were white on the handlebars. Finally, Alan whispered, "You looked like you were on fire." Jacob didn't answer. He couldn't. His throat still tasted of ash. That night, he woke screaming. His mother found him trembling, skin hot as if fevered. "It burns! It still burns!" The next day, he threw his sketchbook away. Jacob never went back to Pembrey Woods, but sometimes when the wind blew from the west, the smell of burning crept through his window and settled on his pillow, like a memory that refused to die.
10 years later, Jacob was 24 and living in Cardiff. He worked in a hardware store, drank too much, slept too little. Every few weeks, the nightmares returned. He'd be back in the bunker, watching his skin bubble like wax, unable to scream because his lungs were already smoke. He told himself it was trauma, just a trick of the mind, but the smell always came with it, not imagined, real, acidic, lingering on his clothes long after he woke. His therapist called it somatic recall. Jacob called it punishment. One Sunday, he took the train back to Pembrey. He told no one. He walked the coast until the dunes bled into forest and found the old railway line half hidden under moss. The world was quiet except for the sea. He stopped at the bunker where it had happened. The entrance was still there, choked with weeds. He crouched. The soil smelled of rust and salt. When he touched the concrete, his fingers came away dark, as if the wall was still bleeding. From deep inside, something exhaled. Warm, human, waiting. Jacob ran. 11 years later, 2006, a warm Saturday evening, the sun hung low over Pembrey County Park as Gareth Hughes and his 15-year-old daughter Rianne followed a woodland trail away from the beach crowds. Gareth liked the quiet. Rianne liked the stories, ghost lights, shipwrecks, soldiers lost in the dunes. They walked in easy rhythm until Rianne stopped. "Dad," she whispered, "someone's up there." A figure moved ahead on the path, slow, unsteady. At first it looked like an old man, but as they drew closer, the details sharpened. The clothes hung in ribbons, edges burned. The skin of the face and hands was dark, cracked, glistening as if half melted. Gareth called it, "Hey, you okay?" No answer. The figure's head turned just enough to show that it had heard, then kept walking. "Maybe he's hurt," said Gareth, already moving faster. But when they rounded the next bend, the path was empty. No man, no footprints, only the faint hiss of the wind. Then came the smell, burned cloth mixed with a bitter chemical tang. It clung to the air like invisible smoke. Rianne gagged. "Dad, it's like something's burning." They turned back toward the main trail. Neither spoke until they reached the car park. Only then did Gareth realize he was shaking. That night, Rianne dreamed of the man. She saw him standing outside her window, flames crawling silently over his body. His mouth opened, and she heard dozens of voices inside it screaming all at once. She woke with her throat raw from shouting. By morning, the smell of smoke filled her room, though nothing burned. Her bedsheets were damp and cold, and on the glass of her window, faintly traced in ash, was the outline of a hand. Stories spread quietly in small towns. The burned man of Pembrey, the screams in the bunkers. Dog walkers whisper about shapes that vanish when looked at directly. Cyclists speak of cold patches on warm days, of footsteps that match their pace just beyond sight. Some say the spirits are those who died in the factory explosions, 100 workers caught in firestorms that melted the walls around them. Others say the land itself is cursed, that long before gunpowder and steel, this ground belonged to older gods who demanded sacrifice. Whatever the truth, Pembrey keeps its secrets buried, but not forever.
Morning light rarely feels right in Pembrey. It creeps rather than shines, filtered through needles and fog until every color turns the same gray-green bruise. In that half light, everything looks burnt already. Colin Jenkins and David Evans had worked Pembrey's woods for years. They were forestry officers, men who knew every ditch, every deer track, every sound a tree makes when it wants to fall. Nothing in the forest surprised them until that afternoon in October 2003. They were clearing wind-blown branches from a narrow service trail nearly 2 miles inland. The trees there grew thick, the air heavy and damp. Evans carried a chainsaw. Jenkins hauled the fuel can. They'd been talking about football when the forest went silent. No birds, no breeze, just the sudden pressure of listening. "See that?" Evans whispered. A shape moved between the trunks 30 yards ahead, tall, broad, too dark against the light. At first, he thought it was a stag standing upright, but then it stepped forward on 2 legs. The creature was 7 feet if it was an inch, hair matted and black, limbs too long, shoulders hunched forward. Where a face should have been, there was only an elongated muzzle, and above it, 2 curved horns like polished bone. The thing watched them, utterly still, its chest rising once, slow and deliberate. Neither man breathed. Then it turned, walking into the trees with the calm weight of something that knew it didn't need to hurry. The undergrowth didn't rustle. The ground left no mark. In seconds, it was gone. Evans exhaled first. What the hell was that? Jenkins swallowed. Not deer, not anything I know. They kept working, pretending they hadn't seen it, until Evans froze again an hour later. The creature was back, farther off, half hidden, watching. When they finally broke and ran for the truck, they didn't stop until the forest thinned behind them. They never told management. Men who talk about monsters don't keep their jobs. But that night, Evans couldn't sleep. Every time he shut his eyes, he saw the horns, pale against the dark. When dawn came, he started searching. Ancient carvings, Celtic myths, anything that might fit. The closest he found was Cernunnos, a horned god of the old tribes, a guardian of the dead and the wild. The more he read, the colder he felt. He never went back to that section of the forest. Jenkins did once and returned white as chalk. "It's still there," was all he said. By 2012, Pembrey's mysteries had found their way online. Forums trading blurry photos, locals swapping rumors about the burned man. One of those readers was Jacob Binion. He'd never escaped that day in '95. The nightmares had become less frequent, but sharper, more physical. Sometimes he'd wake with blisters that vanished by morning, or the smell of smoke thick in his apartment. He needed answers, or at least proof that he wasn't losing his mind. When a documentary producer invited witnesses to meet for an investigation, Jacob agreed. He wasn't the only one. Gareth Hughes came too, older now, haunted by guilt. His daughter Rianne had never recovered from the night they saw the burned man. She'd grown withdrawn, sketching figures made of ash, whispering about the ones who watch. Gareth wanted closure. Jacob wanted the truth. They met at the edge of the forest just before dusk, 2 men, a small film crew, and the damp whisper of the sea. Evans, the former ranger, had agreed to guide them, but refused to go past the old railway. "Past there," he warned, "the land's wrong. You'll feel it." They felt it within minutes. The forest seemed to pulse, each breath of wind like a heartbeat underfoot. Their flashlights caught pieces of old history, bunkers, rusted rails, concrete half swallowed by roots. At the largest ruin, Jacob stopped. "This is the one," he said, "where it happened." Inside, their lights quivered across the walls. The handprint was still there, dark and glossy. The air smelled faintly of oil and burned hair. The cameraman whispered, "It feels like it's breathing in here." A sound rose from deeper in the tunnel, soft at first, then layered,
dozens of whispers spilling over each other. The temperature climbed, sweat prickled down Jacob's neck. The smell thickened until his throat burned. "Let's go," Gareth said, backing towards the stairs. Then the light flared, white, blinding, and Jacob screamed. Fire tore through the bunker, not real fire, but heat without flame, light that seared through the walls. Figures appeared inside it, human shapes, their skin blistered, mouths open in endless cries. They reached for him, arms like molten glass. Rianne's voice echoed from behind them, though she wasn't there. High, trembling, "He's coming." From the darkness beyond the light, something moved, tall, horned. Smoke poured from its shoulders as it stepped forward, each hoofbeat shaking dust from the ceiling. Its face glowed like embers under skin. Jacob staggered back, shouting over the roar, "What do you want?" The creature lifted one hand, long-fingered, the nails black with soot, and pressed it to the wall beside the old red print. The concrete hissed. When it pulled away, a new mark smoked beside the first, fresh, wet, and bright crimson. Then everything went black. They woke outside, lying among the dunes. The bunker entrance was gone, collapsed or buried, none of them could tell. The forest smoldered quietly, though nothing burned. Evans was missing. The cameras were melted into slag. Gareth drove straight home to find Rianne unconscious in bed, her hands covered in ash. On her wall, written in uneven strokes, were the words, "He never left." That night, the forest caught fire for real. Witnesses on the coast saw orange columns rising where no storm had been. By morning, half the park had burned to black sand. Fire crews found no cause, no lightning, no accelerant, just heat, as if the ground itself had ignited. Jacob vanished soon after. His apartment remained locked from the inside. On the table lay his notebook, open to a single line, scrawled again and again until the pen tore through the paper. "The forest breathes." Years later, tourists returned. New trails were built. New signs warned of unstable ground. But locals still refuse to walk the inner paths after dusk. They say you can hear the crackle of unseen flames and smell smoke where no fire burns. Sometimes hikers find prints in the sand, large, cloven, burned into the soil. Sometimes they find handprints on concrete, still warm. And on nights when the tide pulls farthest back, the sea reveals the forest's secret. Fragments of twisted metal, shards of bone, and stones blackened smooth by heat. They call Pembrey peaceful now, but peace is only the sound left after screams run out. The land remembers. It always will.